everybody. Welcome to our StarPeace Talks on Wednesday. I am so delighted to have the lovely Olivier Maxted with me today. And this has just totally happened really organically, including the fact that this wonderful soul has shown up in this beautiful pink that is just like my background. And both of us are wearing lapis lazuli necklaces. Now, I just want to bear in mind that I don't ever wear this necklace. Like, I think I wear it maybe once every 3 years or something like that. So very powerful. And I really am excited to introduce you because you came into my life when I was ready to really activate my Starseed consciousness on a soul level and to bring in so much more of my soul light and actually, you know, stop playing small in all the little places along the way that I was comfortable and actually just go, what's the biggest dream? And it was very simultaneous how you came in. You remember, it was like, I was like, I'm not ready, I'm ready now. And I also, you know, just want to share before I hand over to you, just how important it is to remember that when the student is ready, the teacher appears, because Olivier came into my life with a message from the Arcturian grandmothers, which was before I'd actually learned the different constellations that I was connected to as a starseed. And they came through on that soft pink flame of grace, which allowed me again to recognize more about what I was bringing through. And we worked together for a few months, didn't we? Like, we took a journey, which for me just did something very powerful and very necessary, which was to trust in my inner guidance and the messaging I was receiving. It was literally the messaging I was receiving internally was exactly the same as what I was being given by my star families as you were bringing them through. And I say this before we go any deeper, because as starseeds, we are pioneers. We are walking a path that is not so easy to look for external validation, right? And the usual rules don't apply on many levels, because if you're looking for that validation in terms of, you know, mass populace and just the idea that somehow, how do I put this? Your ideas are going to be easily received. I think it's very important to remember that trusting your inner counsel requires trusting in the non-physical guidance you're receiving as well, through your heart, through connecting to your soul. And that's where we get stuck, is in doubting that, you know, we doubt that. So this was such a poignant message for me and so important. I had to hear it, I don't know how many different ways before it was like, oh, okay, I can just relax, enjoy the show. And our context is very much about, you know, rewiring injustice in terms of starseed consciousness today. But before we go into that, let's just hear a little from you. How are you today, lovely Olivier?
I'm so well. I'm so happy to be with you, Rosanna, and talking and sharing. And yeah, I'd just like to really honor you, you know, in your journey, like your real commitment to truth, you know, to show up ready to be ready to let go, you know, like ready to let go of ideas, beliefs, you know, like the way you'd constructed your life. Even it was just, okay, if I'm going to be of higher service, then there's things I need to let go of. And you were just so courageous and open and loving in the way you did that. So I really honor that in you, Rosie.
Thank you.
And yeah, thank you for inviting me to talk. It was, yeah, as you say, quite amazing. Just the way in the last couple of days, this opportunity presented itself, and here we are. So I'm really looking forward to sharing and exploring and opening up to whatever wants to come through today.
Awesome. Okay, well, would you like to start? Because I think you have always started my sessions with a bit of the didgeridoo, and you have well, I haven't seen one looking like this before.
There you go. So yeah, most of the time, most didgeridoos, people are used to, you know, big piece of timber. And I'd just like to talk about the energy of the didgeridoo actually before I play. So I have the great fortune, I spent 15 years living in Australia. And the reason I went there is to go and see my uncle. And his best friend was an Aboriginal elder. And he taught me so much about the dream time, you know, like the great dreaming. and like how it expresses itself through Aboriginal culture, and many other people too, and journeys as well, like into the bush and, you know, connecting to the land there. If you've never been to Australia, it's unlike any other place I've been to. You know, I've been to all except 2 of the continents of this planet. Australia is just so different to all the others. You know, there's an aliveness to it and a raw force of nature that shared itself in some quite incredible mystical experiences for me. And I think what that's given me is this real context then of that depth, you know, the depth of profoundness of life on this planet. You know, it's the oldest continuous culture on this planet. You know, scientists say at least 80,000 years, you know, that Aboriginal people have carried the transmission of our starseed parents, essentially. Now, that's what scientists say. My Aboriginal elder friend, he said, we've been here since the dream time. You know, there is no time that they were not here, you know, because they embody that universal consciousness. And, you know, there's stories of when the mountains were on fire, you know, Dreamtime stories about the mountains being on fire. There's been no active volcanoes in Australia for 30 million years. So where do those stories come from? You know, it's it's such an honor and a privilege, you know, to have received those transmissions. The didgeridoo came to me when it was one of those things, like growing up, I always thought it was a cool instrument. You know, whenever I heard it, I was just like, oh wow, I love it. And then when I was living in Oz, the opportunity came to get one. And as soon as I started playing, it was like, oh man, I have to, like, this is my life. Like, I have to keep playing. And actually, one of the most powerful experiences I had in those early years, because I started playing about 2002, and in 2004, I was working at the Athens Olympics. It was my first time in Greece, and I was blown away. You know, like the culture, the joie de vivre. Like, there's a French word, but there's a fire, like, and a passion. Hey, you know, like,
you're talking to a Greek, darling.
Exactly. Like, I think this is why it's coming through. You know, so because the Olympics were on, all the churches were open. So I found myself, because I took my Didge, like I had to travel with it. I found myself walking into a church just below the Acropolis, looking up at these icons, they call, like, the golden saints around me. It was like, some presence here. And the woman who was looking after the church, because of course if the church's open, it needs someone to look after it. She was like, come over here. It's like, what is this? What is this? You know, I was like, didgeridoo. It's like, what does it do? I was like, oh, play for you. And she was like, wow, you stay here all day. I'll keep bringing you cups of tea and lukumi, is it? Like the little... Yeah. She just kept feeding me that all day long, and I just played, and as people were coming in, like, they were just like blown away, like the sound of the Didge in that setting with the church, Acropolis just up there. It was really transcendental, really. So, you know, the Didge, I feel like it has that energy of transcendence, you know, and transformation. And why does it have that? I feel because it's the energy of the void, you know, like it's hollow, like it's just a hollow tube, essentially. That's why, you know, this one's spiraled, most of them are straight. But, you know, the void from which all is manifested, you know, all comes from the void, all returns to the void.
The womb of creation.
Yeah, voila. So what, you know, when we play and really bring through that consciousness of pure creation, you know, then we're able to drop into that vibration of, well, what's here? You know, like, if anything's possible, like, what do I want to drop into? And you know, with my partner Megan, for many years we were creating sound healing experiences, and we still do online now, not so much in person, but even online, you know, people tell us how deep they go, you know, and the things that are brought to them to resolve, to heal, to embrace, are beyond anything that they could have thought of. They were just like this gift from the divine. So I just thought it'd be a perfect way to begin our session today, just to play a bit and allow people just to drop out of their heads into their hearts, and just allow whatever is there to be loved, embraced, to show itself.
You know what, just before you start, I'm just loving, I'm just feeling the energy shifts in you talking, first of all, and I've just had a great idea about my retreat. I'm going to invite you and Megan to play it online for those who come along, because that's definitely a part of it. And when you mentioned 80,000 years, it got me thinking about Lara, who has come on and done a couple of podcasts with us here. Yeah. And Lara's written a book called The Story, which is to rival the Bible. And I'm very keen, as part of StarPeace, like one of the ideas is this is going to become a movie, and it's who's going to support that. But she was talking about the fact that we've had 80,000 years of patriarchy, right? Before that was the time of matriarchy. And if the scientists, are aware of 80,000 years, and we're talking 30 million and more, it just says a lot about what we do understand currently as humans, and what else there is, and how perhaps also what I'm kind of sensing through what you're saying is this, the Didge is a way to actually unify the masculine and the feminine energies in a way that's really, it just creates utter balance and harmony. It's a hollow tube. It's both a phallus and a yoni, I don't want to use the V word anymore because I don't like where it came from, so I'm not going to, but that just came through, so I just thought that might be useful. And please, once you have played the Didge and everyone's settling, tell everyone the story of the kangaroo, because I just love that. I'm going to be quiet for a minute and give you the space to do this.
Sure. Gorgeous. So when I finish playing, we'll just have a little bit of silence, hey Rosie, just to let that energy.
I'm going to mute myself, okay?
Okay, wonderful. Okay. So coming back into your heart, bringing your awareness to this moment. Thank you for listening.
Feeling quite emotional here, my brother. And these days, whenever I'm doing anything around StarPeace, I have this piece of Celestial that I connect to. And I was just holding that and just, wow, feeling so grateful. One, to know you. Two, that you're here sharing this with a growing tribe of awakening starseeds that want to co-create a new reality here on Earth. So let's set the context. We are the Paradise Earth pioneers. We are the architects. We are the builders and the energizers of Paradise Earth, which is the original blueprint of this planet. And that is what we're here to remember. I don't know are we reclaiming it? We are claiming it. We are claiming because,
absolutely.
You know, it's not like we've claimed it before. It was, we lost it, now we're claiming it. That's kind of how it works for me. But tell us, okay, we have so many places we could go. So let's start with the kangaroo. Tell us the story.
Okay, sure. So this was an event that really gave me a direct experience of connection and oneness. Thanks to the bush. So I've been living in Australia about 3 or 4 years. I was teaching high school, teaching children in high school. That's what I was doing. And adolescents have a lot going on. So it used to be quite a lot of pressure and stress. So I used to love once a year getting away into the bush and just camping for a few days. Really simple life, connecting to nature. And there was a book, I'd bought a book on national parks in New South Wales. And there was this page that just kept opening up. And I just felt this energy of this mountain. I was just like, I have to go there. There's a place called Mount Capital. And it was like a 12-hour drive. You know, you look at it on the map, it's like it's tiny amount of New South Wales, like you realize how big the country is. But I drove there, this beautiful moonlit evening. So Australia's got this great dividing range, okay, these old mountains on the east coast, and I was driving over the dividing range and then down onto the plains on the other side, the cotton fields. And out of the cotton fields, like totally flat, was this incredible collection of peaks, and it's an old volcanic area. Okay, so out of this flat plain, these volcanoes grew, and they've eroded now over millions of years, but they still have this energy to them. And as I was driving in, I was just like, "Ooh, this is going to be fun." It's between Christmas and New Year, so you know it's summer. It's warm, but there's no one around because it's Christmas holidays. So people are, you know, with their families and stuff. So I was just camping by myself in the bush. And before the kangaroo, actually, you wouldn't know this story. The day before I met the kangaroo, I was walking on this ridge. Okay, so imagine when the lava was there and the volcanoes were doing this stuff. The lava had created a dome. Okay, and when the lava left, the dome had sunk, and what was left was then the edge of the dome. You know, imagine if you cut a cross section, you know, of that dome. So there was this about that wide strip of rock with sheer drops either side. And I was walking along, I was like, this is epic. It was just like forest that side and scrub on this side, but like about a 400-foot drop, you know. It's just, okay, right, focus where your feet are going, you know, don't look at the drop. And I was thinking I'd walk all the way around and come back to where my car was. And I got like 2/3 of the way around, and there's this drop of about 12 foot down, 6 foot across, and then another 12 foot back up, right? So this big notch, like in the edge of this rim. And like the gung ho one in me is like, I could jump it. I reckon I could jump it. You know, I reckon I could, you know, and it's just like, but if I miss, it's a 400-foot miss, you know. It's like, and I'm running iron. Do I climb down? What do I do? And as I'm looking down at this little gap in the rocks, this lizard comes out, little fella, that kind of golden, looks up at me and goes, turn back. I was like, okay. So I just turned around and headed back to my car, and it was just like Thanks, Lizard. You saved me. Like, that would have been like pretty embarrassing, really, if I'd have done that. So I'm realizing like this place is alive, right? So next day I'm thinking, I want to go and watch a sunset. So I look on the map. Oh, okay, right. There's a ridge about 40 minutes drive away, still in the national park, that looks west. So that'll be a great place to go and watch the sunset. So drive in my car on these little dirt tracks, get to a car park my car, walk through forest for about 40 minutes or so, get to this little grassy area right on the edge of a cliff that's overlooking a ravine. And when I look down into the ravine, it's just forest. And the feeling I get from that forest is Gondwana land, you know, just like when all the continents were connected, you know, like way, way back. And I'm almost expecting dinosaurs to come flying out of the trees, you know. It's just like, this place is ancient. Like, no one's been here. No one's been, like, this is insane. I'm looking out to the west. There's the flat plains. And again, there's another couple of national parks, beautiful forests. One of them is called the Pilliga Scrub. The other one's called the Warren Bungles, which is precious to me because there's a telescope there, and my brother's an astronomer. So when I'd been in Oz just a few months, he got some telescope time. So I flew up with him from Sydney in this tiny little plane. And I had a week in the national park there in the Warren Bungles while he was doing his astronomy stuff at the telescope. And then we had a couple of days together. And so I had, like, just looking out, I seen the Warren Bungles, just, oh, I love that place. The Pilliga Scrub, which is between me and the Warren Bungles, is burning because it's summer. There's bushfires. So it's putting loads of smoke out into the sky, which is making the sun go really red. So I've got this red light shining in, and this golden, reddy golden light. Now what's blowing my mind now as I sit and look around me is that out of the forests below, millions of tiny baby spiders are doing their thing. Like, the way that the spiders travel is they put out a long silk because they're super light. The silk catches the wind and they fly. So I've got millions of baby spiders flying out of the forest, which creates this like curtain of silk, which is catching the golden light around me. And I'm just like, this is awesome. I can't believe my eyes. Like, this is just blowing my mind. And then out of the forest behind me comes this kangaroo. So the kangaroo comes out, hop, hop, hop. And I'm looking at him going, have you seen this? Like, it's awesome. And he's like, yeah, whatever, mate. I see it every day. No worries. Keeps eating. I'm just like, yeah, man, it's blowing my mind. Oh, okay, right. So wait, watch the sun. The sun sets. Now, this is pretty close to the tropics, right? So it goes dark real quick. And it gets dark and I realize, hang on, I didn't bring a torch with me. So I've got to walk 40 minutes back through the forest, back to my car without a torch in the darkness. Like, this is going to be fun, eh? And I'll just start. So I turn around to go on the path. The kangaroo looks at me, goes hop, 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 stands in front of me. Come on then. Oh, you're kidding me, right? Anyway, okay, I'll follow you. So the kangaroo, he'd go like 4 or 5 hops, he'd wait for me. Whenever there was a curve in the path, he'd just go hop, hop, like cut the corner, and he'd wait for me. And he waited for me every time till he took me back to my car. And when I got back to my car, there's his family. There's like a dozen kangaroos all around my car looking after it. And I was just so filled with gratitude and love. Just like, thank you, thank you, thank you so much. And I thanked them, and they all just dispersed, off they went. And that was my first experience of a conscious connection with this expression of life that was the kangaroo and all of its family. And it was mind-blowing.
I think that is such a beautiful introduction into really our theme today. It's middle of the day. Because I've got the not heebie-jeebies, but I'm tingling all over as you say that, because I think it's so overlooked. And our connection to nature is just phenomenal, and to the animal kingdom. And we're so used to looking outward in terms of trying to receive information rather than looking inward and making that connection, right? You were stuffed if that kangaroo, well, I'm sure you would have found a way, but you could have spent a night in the forest going round and round, right?
Yeah.
Now, you know, those of you know me now, I'm not such a big fan of the big snakes. I've spent time in Australia. I lived in Sydney, the Blue Mountains. It was phenomenal. But even the spiders that you're talking about, I'm like, oh my God, were they funnel webs? Like, what are you talking about? You're like, they're so beautiful. So it just tells you where you're at. And, you know, this is the key. Okay, so we're here for those of you who haven't sort of yet caught up with some of the videos we've been putting out this week. It's been a lot around human justice and divine justice, and how we as starseeds, you know, as soul consciousness embodied in human form, navigate through the different justice systems, I'll say. And we had a little bit of a chat before obviously we came on, and we're looking at really essentially what the bigger picture is and how we can navigate through as starseeds things that we encounter along our path that trigger this sense of injustice, and can easily, if we're not careful, just send us down a spiral of doom and actually really sort of distract us of what our primary purpose is. Because all of us in the process of awakening go through the warrior stage, right? The fighter, I call it the indigo ray, but it's, you know, others will call it other things. It's that stage of awakening when you look around and go, what? I've been lied to. Things are not this way. And there's a rage that comes, right? And I see many, many beautiful, heart-centered beings that are doing great work in this world, but are still so motivated by their pain stories because they haven't cleared their bloodlines, they haven't, you know, worked with their own experiences yet and connected to this soul connection that will help. And this trigger of injustice can, I call it the reinforcing stitch. We know we're growing and we're evolving if we're taking 2 steps forward, 1 step back. There's that sense of growing and, you know, learning from repetition. But when we're taking 1 step forward and 2 steps back, we really need to have a look at that and go, all right, what is pulling me out of my center? What is stopping me really moving forward? And this is this thing about aligning with your bigger dream, because as a starseed, you have, you know, we've activated our blueprint. We came here to activate this blueprint on this earth, to remember who we are, what we've came here for, and then to get on with it, right? But if we're not careful, the perception of injustice on this planet can really get us stuck on some of the rungs of the ladder, if you like, rather than right where we are. Anything I'm saying doesn't resonate, just say, but this is what's coming through, right? So the whole invitation really for Ollie to come in, sorry, Olivier to come in.
Ollie's good, that's good.
Was to really help us to anchor this awareness of this soul energy and how it can support us. And I've asked you maybe to go into a little bit about empathy and sympathy and compassion, because I see this paradox in us. You know, part of us being the amazing beings we are, and everyone's an amazing being, right? But that our particular role, that sensitivity that we have, that people often associate as emotional empathy, being an emotional empath, it's a kind of double-edged sword, isn't it, really? Because if we don't learn to, one, feel something, but then kind of step back from it eating us up. You know, there is work to do there. If it is eating you up, that tells you there's something there that needs to be worked through. But to be able to come back to our center and ask that question, how can I have the most impact in this situation that is beneficial, rather than just going straight into that fight, flight, freeze response and just going for it, right? There is a time to fight. We've been through a really tough time the last 2 years. Everyone has had different roles to play, but I'll just hand that over to you and let me know what's coming.
Thank you. Yeah, a couple of things. One is that in terms of empathy, compassion, you know, compassion is when we feel and understand what somebody's going through, but we don't need to go into that energy with them. You know, empaths, and I'll do it myself, you know, sometimes we feel like, oh, that person's really struggling. Oh, I'll go into that feeling of struggle with them. But, you know, if we think about when we were little and, you know, we banged our knee, Mum came, yeah, she kissed it better. She didn't then hurt her own knee, you know, so that, you know, she'd have the same injury as you. You know, no, she was strong. She held that that motherly love. And she's just like, it's going to be okay. You know, we'll clean it up and, you know, you'll be playing again in 10 minutes. And I think, you know, that's a really powerful place to be able to help people from. It's like, yes, like I understand what you're going through. And like, yeah, open your heart to them, but not in a way that pulls you out of your energy, you know, pulls you out of your power. And that's a journey in itself, you know, very often, you know, for many people, to know when to allow a certain, you know, emotion or feeling in, or when to know just like this situation is asking for me to be strong, you know, to be loving and compassionate, you know, first of all to myself, because is it really compassionate to ourselves to go into somebody else's story and allow ourselves to be swept up in that? You know, usually it isn't, you know, and that's the thing, is that we all come here with things to experience, you know, at a soul level. This is this is the reason why we incarnate, you know, and talking about, you know, starseeds is that, yeah, we come from those, like those high densities of consciousness, and we come here to help raise the vibration, you know, of the planet, of everyone around us. The condition for that is that we have to go through the veil of forgetting as well, the same as everybody else. You know, we have to forget that we are these eternal beings that have always lived and will always live. You know, we have to come into this human experience. And what will happen for us then as we go through this human experience, the word for it, you know, is catalyst. Things will happen that will cause suffering. You know, we'll see injustice, we'll see things that happen, we'll experience things ourselves that we feel like, well, that's not fair. Like, why is that going on? Like, how come I'm receiving this? Like, what's the story? Mm. The beauty of the spiritual path that I feel is that it gives you that greater perspective to understand that we're on a journey as much as anybody else. And what is the journey teaching us? It's teaching us to bring love in more and more trying circumstances. You know, when we see the one who forgives the person that murdered their son, you know, or murdered their daughter, like, I don't know if I could do that. That's huge. But I see in her, like, she's transcended the human, like, lower density stuff of like, I want revenge. And she's come into the place of like, that person is somebody else's son or daughter, you know, like, and they did that out of pain. So to create more pain isn't going to solve it. You know, we need to come into love. And so, you know, this is this is what transforms everything, you know, is that when we have that understanding, is that everybody that we see is on their own journey, you know, and it could be that what they're experiencing, exactly what their soul needs, you know, because in the previous incarnation, they were the ones like dealing out the punishment. In this lifetime, they need to understand what it's like to receive that. Mm-hmm. And you know, at a mental level, we want to like fix everything, you know, and say like, that's wrong, that's right. We need more of that and less of that. And we're not the creator. That's not our job. You know, like,
we play the judge, don't we? And it's kind of like, it's not our job.
Exactly right. You know, just as the planet's spinning in their orbit in the perfect harmony, you know, that's not our job either. You know, like, we can let the planets get on with their amazing what they do. You know, like, let's bring that understanding into our lives and just focus on, as you say, go inward. You know, like, what's being asked for in each moment? Like, what's being asked for? Am I being asked to be strong and show up as an advocate for somebody and an ally for somebody to help them realize something in their lives? Or am I being asked to step back, you know, trust and see them living their highest path, see them realizing everything that they need? You know, I was talking with Megan yesterday about there's a film called Lion about a young Indian boy who he got lost on a train one night he and his brother were down in the railway yards, and he got lost. Like he lost his brother, and he was only like 5 or 6 or something. And this train was just going across India, and he ended up like in a city somewhere. He had no clue. Like he kind of barely knew his name, you know. And he was taken to an orphanage, and these Australian parents adopted him and gave him an amazing life. And years later, as he came into his manhood, you know, he was like, who am I? Like, I want to find my mum. And anyway, the movie is incredible. Basically, he ended up being reunited with his family, you know, and what came from that was that he was able to do so much good, you know, because he came from now this privileged background with a lot of material wealth. He could help so many more people, you know, but like he went through such torment, you know, and suffering. So, you know, if we'd have seen him at that, in that time, like when he was in the orphanage, or when he was going like so distressed at like not knowing who he was, not knowing where he came from and who his parents were, you know, if we would have seen him in those moments, you know, we might have said, oh, you know, look, I want to fix that. But the fact that he went through that whole journey brought such amazing harmony, joy, like love, like so much good came from that. You know, so that human thing, like to judge and say, you know, this is wrong in this moment. When we expand our perspective, then we can start to allow what is the natural order of the universe just to do what it needs to do, you know, and to bring the perfect resolution or solution to whatever is happening, you know, for what we're seeing. So, you know, always, that's what I love about, I'm so grateful for, you know, this spiritual journey that I'm on, is it gives me that perspective, that ability, like when things are like stuff still happens, of course, you know, it's just like, oh my God, like that's just happened, and now that person wants that and that. Okay, like what's being asked for? Okay, I'm trusting that everything's happening for me. The universe has this amazing plan for me, and these are the conditions of it, you know. And so it actually reminds me, it's like a bit of a follow-on from the kangaroo story, was that when I got back to Nimbin, the village where I lived, amazing hippie village, and it was market day, and at the market was a group of Aboriginal dancers, and I was like, oh, I'm into this, and you know, they're getting us to move like a goanna and all this sort of stuff, and it was just so much fun. And I was talking to one of the guys. I'd met him before. His name's Magpie. He's an amazing artist and dancer, and he's a really wise sort, and he's funny. Like, he's a really funny guy. I love his energy. And I was telling him, I was like, Magpie, mate, I was like, this thing happened with the kangaroo, and I told him the story, and he was like, yeah, of course, mate. He knew what you needed, you know. So he knew you weren't hungry. You weren't after him. He looked after you, mate. That's the bush. Like, that's what it does. And I was like, oh, thanks, Magpie. Like, yeah, okay. It just gave me this perspective beyond just the words. It was just this transmission of like, everything's connected. It's all okay. Fast forward years later, I'm back in the UK. I was looking after my parents. My mum was in sort of the last few months of her journey on this planet, and looking after her. And I met Megan. And like, I'd started the sound healing journey. We met through sound healing. It was just like instant like connection, just like, we have to be together. So you're talking, you know, the masculine and the feminine together to bring this energy and share this incredible healing energy together. And about a week or so after I met her, ran at her place, and she shows me a picture that her sister had brought it back from her, from Australia. So her sister had traveled to Oz a few years before and brought back, I don't know if you can see it.
Yeah.
It's a didgeridoo player. It's a guy playing a didgeridoo. Now it gets even better. Who's the artist? It's Magpie.
That Magpie. I can't see it, but I'm guessing.
Yeah. It's a bit hard to see. Yeah, Magpie made this stone. You know, so when we think, when we think about all of the conditions that were in place for me to meet Megan. It's just like the human mind cannot understand that, couldn't even conceive of how to put that together. Like if you watched it in a movie, you go, nah, that'll never happen. Yeah.
And that, you actually reminded me beautifully, because it was actually Megan I met first through another thing I was involved in a while ago. And that's how you came into my life, through Megan. And it's so interesting actually how things kind of go with that. But as you say, I mean, this reminds me very much about what I was talking about in another video about what is predestined and what is free will, and how, there is nothing happening to us. Like, this is one of the key things that, as a starseed, as someone who is choosing to consciously co-create their reality, those are the only people I work with, is those that want to create with the highest good of all in mind and the win-win-win. It's like that ultimate surrender to the higher plan. We use our desire as a motivational force, right? To allow ourselves to dream a dream and not being, attached to it working out exactly as we plan. But you couldn't make this up. You couldn't make all of that up. And we actually do, in every situation in our lives where we consider an injustice in front of us, take a moment to just step back into alignment and not react, unless it literally is a life-saving situation where you've got to pull someone out of danger, but just come into that. I've been playing around a lot with zero balance in the body and how that opens up to the 0 point field of infinite possibilities, right? It's like, that's our beam me up Scotty place. That's the place where we can go, whoop, what do I need here? Bring it back down. And very often it's the not acting. It's the not doing the rescuing that's so important, right? Because that is part of our old dynamic. And sometimes the way I describe things is a little crude. And I do this just because I know as humans, we like to try and make sense of the things we can't really make sense of, because the infinite mind and the finite mind are two different things. But I kind of described sympathy as a 3D, a kind of conditioned mind sort of space. And it's that sort of, it's different to empathy. To me, it's about pity on some level, but I could have that wrong. It's easy for us to label things as good or bad, right? So we could say sympathy 3D, empathy more of a 4D thing, because the emotional mental body is very linked as the pain body is. It's all one and the same. And then 5D is where we are just that bit detached enough to be able to download the most helpful information, right, for how we can show up. But it's easy to make one wrong and one right? And I don't want to say anything is wrong or right, because we're multidimensional beings. And I've shared with you the story, and others know as well, if they've been catching these weekly, that a very dear friend of mine passed recently. And I say, a very dear soul passed recently, who I knew. I didn't know her as a bosom buddy friend. That's the truth. I knew her in a professional capacity, but through her pregnancy, her son's birth, and then later when he was taken away, I was there and have been there throughout. And it really got my goat, like if there was anything that would get my fire going, it was this, what I perceived as a really unjust situation on the surface. And, it is on let's just own it on every level. There is a woman who has lost her life from a broken heart, because the system that was supposed to protect her and her son, right, because it is a support system, becomes a punishment system and a cover-up system and all sorts of other things, because we're not okay with owning stuff in the third dimension. They've got to blame someone, right? It's like someone's got to be wrong. And that's what our judicial system is like as well. It's based on punishment. It's not based on, wow, there's a person in pain really acting out in pain. We need to stop that symptom and get to the cause, right? At the moment, it doesn't operate that way. But let's just take this, because I've seen, I mean, in that situation, if there's one thing I just wish I had done from the start, was trust myself more. But I've obviously grown and evolved a lot in the years this has occurred. And now I'm happy to be the person that doesn't do what everyone else does, but says, do you want to hear this? Because this has come through for you, and it will support you if you are willing to open your heart to it. So that's been a big lesson. And I do believe, as tragic as things are on the physical level, there is a higher order. And we've discussed that as well. And it's to do with the bloodline clearing that hadn't happened, that my dear beloved soul friend is working in the non-physical. Let's just go into 3D, the density conversation and the dimensions conversation, because you know, I sometimes find this hard to fathom in terms of dimensions and density. And you just said that we've moved into fourth density. We have just moved into it. You talked to me when we were working together about fifth density and what I was connecting to in terms of the density of wisdom. So do you want to just explain a little bit about the third density, fourth density, fifth density, and how they relate to dimensions?
Sure. So I'm super grateful to, there's a guy called Aaron Abke. If people want to find out more about it, he's a really good resource. He creates amazing YouTubes. He brought to my attention the Ra material. So the Ra material was channeled in the early 80s, and it's an ascended civilization that aids Earth in its spiritual evolution. And they teach about these different densities of consciousness. So 7's the magic number. Yeah, you know, we see it in the octave of music, you know, the 7 chakras, the colors of the rainbow. It's all mirrored in, you know, the macrocosm in the microcosm, you know. So when we think about our chakras, if we think about the base chakra being first density, you know, so the story of creation, let's try and make it as easy as possible. So basically, we've moved through many different densities. You know, we see it in the planet, you know, there's rock, and then there's trees, and then there's animals, and then there's, you know, human beings, and then blah, 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 blah. So in our own journey, if we think about how the consciousness changes, when we move from the solar plexus, you know, it's about will, you know, and force and making things happen, into the heart. We love, you know, we're in love. Like, love is us, you know, the heart. It's the bridge between these lower chakras, which are the densities of, you know, the physical world, and the higher chakras. You know, when we think about our starseed roots, you know, it's all up here. It's like it's coming in through our crown, and, you know, it's those higher vibrations. So these are the densities of consciousness as well. So, you know, what happens is mirrored in the planet, you know. So the planet has gone through that solar plexus time, lots of warfare, lots of control, you know, the use of force. And we've just ended, 2012 was the watershed, you know, because we hadn't blown ourselves up. Here we go. Now the ascension status begins, you know, and it was like a clarion call that went out into the heavens, you know, and all of the ascended beings just went, woohoo, Earth done it. Let's go, you know, let's help. Like, let's be part of it. And so we see like so many children being born now that it's just like, wow, like the veil's thinning, like that veil of forgetting that we spoke of before. It's getting thinner and thinner. A friend of ours in the States, she was telling us how her son, I think when he was 1 year old, he had the vocabulary of a 5-year-old. And quite soon he was starting to channel his deceased grandmother, just sitting at the dinner table, and he'd just be bringing her through, you know. It's like, this is what our evolution has brought us to, is now like the ones coming in are just like, yeah, I remember who I am. And they're, you know, they're bringing through more and more of those capacities and potentials from those higher frequencies of consciousness. So this is the density. Like, the density is like the environment, as it were. Yeah, it's like the
love that.
Yeah, it's like the keynote. You know, when you're playing on the piano, it's like there's the keynote that everything relates to. So everything's set, you know, now in this new frequency of love. Within that, then we have dimensions. So the dimensions enable that love to be expressed in many different ways. And the way that, you know, I experience different dimensional realities is that so often, you know, if I'm doing a healing session for somebody, it may be that there's a, I don't want to call it a past life because all time is now, but, you know, like a parallel life. that comes in, and in a certain dimension, and it's like, okay, so that is showing us something in this moment that can be healed, and that healing then ripples out and spreads across the whole universe. And when we're talking about 3D, 4D, 5D, 3D is very much that I push this and that happen, that pushes that, like there's laws of physics and all that stuff, action, reaction. 4D is more like transformation. It's like we're bringing a lot more consciousness and we're involved in it as well. It's like I'm going to focus my consciousness on this aspect of the world because I feel that it should be transformed and it should change. 5D is that, everything's working out, and this is creation. Like, this is true creation. True creation has no agenda. True creation expresses itself and unfolds perfectly in each moment. So, as we spoke earlier, about perspectives, it's like when we can be in that 5D vibration, loving vibration, how much more present can we be then? Like when we show up then in that awareness and presence with others, transformation happens like that. We don't have to do anything. It's because like we're giving, we're setting the keynote then up here so that we're giving everything that's happening here the opportunity to now come up to that level. So we don't have to do them. We don't dive down and drag it up there. We can't make ourselves sick enough to make somebody healthy, but we can vibrate at the frequency of health and let them feel that. Like how many times have you just sat with someone for a little while and it's like, I just feel better just being with you, thank you. So, that's the place I want to live, is in that 5D, and there are great teachers who show us what that is. David Hawkins is one. He wrote Power versus Force, and he calibrated the levels of consciousness. An amazing soul. People would be brought to him. He had the most successful psychologist practice in the United States, in New York City. Like, people were just coming from all over the country to see him. Why? So many examples of people who'd been catatonic, that couldn't speak, like so stuck in their trauma that they couldn't speak, couldn't interact with the world, had been for years and years. They would be brought into his presence. He wouldn't say anything. He would just be with them in pure love for an hour. They would go out smiling, laughing, joking, transformed and healed. So, imagine if all of us cultivate that level of presence and loving awareness within ourselves and then step out into the world. The world's going to change pretty quick.
Yes, absolutely. And that, I love speaking with you and hearing you, because it's so validating for what I've received. And like literally did my first live light language transmission publicly yesterday. And so much of what you've said actually came through, and we have to really trust, like I called the heart Clapham Junction, because I was like, you can literally go anywhere you want. You have to come into here to then go anywhere you want, and your lower or higher nature will decide, right? But it's more to impress upon those of us who are sensitives, who feel the pain of the world, but learning that actually suffering for the world is not helpful. That martyrdom concept is over, right? That is not serving us now to go to the next level. Like, it's like Christ consciousness brought us to the heart, and now it's like in the soul energy, we can just bring it through us. We are acupuncture needles, bringing this energy into the earth, anchoring it into our earth chakras, transmitting it through the crystalline grid, and just holding it. And if we can hold it, then those around us uplift. If we keep wavering, it creates more disturbance in the field. So it seems selfish for a lot of people to understand, or a lot of souls, I should say, to understand that actually really tending to that presence is how everything that you're grasping for, and it's such a lesson for me, is actually on its way if you just hold that energy. So let's just, I'm aware where we're at, and I really want people to kind of have an awareness of how they can reach you, etc. And I do remember, like, one of the key things that came from me working with you was recognizing the potency of my magic, right? And my purpose. And for so long, it's almost like trying to bring it down a few notches so people can actually get it, right? And it's like, stop trying to be like everyone else, and what, you know, be you, own that it's not everyone's thing. And I remember you telling me about a parallel life, past life, whatever. It seemed that what had happened was an injustice had been created because I had been there'd been a filter put on a situation, which meant that someone who wasn't of a vibration to work with me came to work with me and hear my sound, and that blew them to smithereens on a soul level, right? And that can seem like an injustice I've carried, all sorts of other bits, but it's like about recognizing that, as I said earlier, when the student is ready, the teacher appears, right? And very often we can get caught up with wanting to be things and all the rest of it, not recognizing that if we just own what we are without apology, we can actually then do what we're here to do, because we all have our unique part to play, right? So one thing I've recognized with you is how I do the physical, structural, I call it divine architecture, alignment and activation, to build all of the foundational energy to allow that crown to soul connection to really be activated. And I was seeing it as an Eiffel Tower, a golden Eiffel Tower, when we were working together. And, you know, what I've noticed, what I've experienced from you is, in the building of this bridge, which is kind of where I get to in my work, right, and getting to that soul energy, you and Megan in your beautiful work just bring all of that stuff coming through and able to process it through our beingness so that it can be relevant in this life, and we can let go of grasping. I think that's the key thing, is let go of grasping, let go of it being attached to a specific way of things working out, and be in this presence. And you are that, you know, you are that. So how can people actually reach you if they would like to get in touch with you?
Yeah, thank you, Rosie. And yeah, just again say, like, such a joy working with you. Like, that connection was ready to just plug straight in. Hey, it was, yeah, really quite remarkable. So yeah, if someone would like to explore that kind of journey, then a sound bath healing is the website that we use, that we created.
Is that, sorry, sound bath healing or
yeah. SOUND, sound bath healing, BATH, sound bath healing. It's from the time when we were doing sound baths. So
I'm going to put it in the comments now.
Fantastic, okay. Thank you. So soundbathhealing.com. You can send me an email. So love, LOVE, at soundbathhealing.com, and also Soundbath Healing on Facebook, or Olivier John Maxted on Facebook. Feel free to reach out. Always happy to explore and have a conversation and see what's being asked for.
Yeah, I love that. I love how you just held space in such a beautiful way, because as I said, I was firstly like, what's this all about? Do I need this? What's going on? And then it's like, no, I want to do it. I'm not ready yet. I knew it was so weird, because it literally worked out that we had conversation a few months before, didn't we? And I was very much like, I'll be ready at this point. And that was it, you know, whatever it was. And, you know, something again, just to sort of leave people with, is that I remember you saying to me that my role, which I hadn't really understood before, was around the wanderers, the starseeds that have kind of come to this earth to be impactful in a big way, but have fallen through the amnesia veil and actually really got lost in the search. Do you want to elaborate a little on that, in case people resonate with it? Because it feels like our work is very joint. You know, I do prep groundwork stuff for people to do as much clearing as possible, and then you come in and add that extra stuff really comes through and sinks to the roots. So do Do you want to share a little bit about that? Because I think we're working with the same people.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and the ones that's come, like from you then to work with us was just like so seamless in the way that synergistically just has developed. It's beautiful. So yeah, that veil of forgetting, that's I'll say the risk, but that's what can happen, is that we can get caught up in those 3D stories, and become karmically part of the story of the earth at third density. So that is what happens to actually the majority of wanderers, actually starseeds. Most of them just come into they did that to me and I'm going to do that to them, and all that stuff just pulls them into that vortex then, that really dense vortex. So, the way to break free of that is to, just like we've been saying, to come back into a space of truth, and I love, like, Muji's such a beautiful teacher of this. You can watch his stuff on YouTube, and he teaches this so beautifully, to come out of the mind, like the world of the mind has created, and come into your heart, and from there, all suffering ends. And there's those two contrasting paths. The path of the ego is the belief in separation, that person is different to me. This path, the path of enlightenment, enlightenment, the Buddha said, it's the end of suffering. All suffering ends when we realize that we are everyone else, and we are everything else. We are all expressions of the Creator, choosing to experience itself and express itself in different ways. So, when we see the other as ourselves, and, that is not something we can learn from a book. That is something we have to experience and embody, and mystical experiences are attainable. We don't need to take a substance. We don't need to go to jungles of Peru, do any of those things. We can have a mystical experience, just sitting in our lounge, and just realize this cosmic connection to all things. And when we really feel that, and embody that, and can legitimately say, and authentically say, as we're walking down the street, as someone walks towards us, I love you. I love you. I love you. When we're in that space, then we're free.
Beautiful. Love it, love it, love it. You are reminding me of my friend who was washing up and then suddenly got the download that he's a starseed from Orion. So, this really can happen, folks. Olivier, thank you so much for being here. And, I do love to invite guests back because there's always so much more to talk about. So,
beautiful.
Yeah, I look forward to the next installment. But for now, I intend, as I'm sure you do, that for everyone who has participated in being part of this energy exchange between us is liberated a level from that kind of, what do I do here? How do I show up? What's the right thing to do? Because when we trust ourselves implicitly, it looks different. It looks different from a divine perspective. And we'll leave it there.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Huge hugs.
Yeah.
See you in the flesh soon as well.
Beautiful. I'm so looking forward to that.
Bye, everybody. Lots
Bye.
of
Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Actually, before I forget, if you haven't actually looked at the StarPeace Consciousness Facebook page, there's a whole load of things there that you can literally do to shift your focus. So please check it out because it's all for free and we can all do it and we can walk around telling everyone we love them.